Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel on local solutions along the Wasatch Front. I'm delighted today to be joined by three wonderful purveyors of local solutions and another who studies them. So our purveyors are first, Cari Tagge. She's the Chief Energy Officer, which I take it means vital force, of Tagge's famous fruit and veggie farms. Tagge's owns 80 acres of orchards, and they lease 53 acres for row crops. You may be familiar, some of you, with their stands all over the Wasatch Front. Our second is Ashley Patterson. She's the daughter of a farmer mother, but she joins us today as Executive Director of Wasatch Community Gardens. She's been Executive Director since 2012 and has expanded the servings of Wasatch Community Gardens to include school-based gardens and job training for people planning to go into farming. She's a member of the Food Policy Task Force in Salt Lake City and the state of Utah's Agriculture Advisory Board to the Department of Agriculture. Philip Grubisa trained as a chef. He's originally from Florida. He's been in Utah since 2008 and worked as a chef up in Park City. Since 2014, he has been the owner of Beltex Meats, which is a locally sourced whole animal butcher. And finally, Carlos Santana, who's my colleague in the philosophy department here at the university. Carlos specializes in interdisciplinary work in philosophy of science and data science. At the U, he's affiliated with the Center for Ecological Planning and Design and with the Center for Global Change and Sustainability. So with that, we're just going to go in order: Cari, Ashley, Philip, and then Carlos. You're on, Cari.
Wonderful. I'm Cari Tagge, and I'm a farmer. My husband, Thane, and I are the owners of Tagge's famous fruit and veggie farms. I'm the CEO of the company, Chief Energy Officer, and my husband, Thane, is the CFO, Chief Farming Officer. We are an on-the-ground, grassroots, mom-and-pop small business. Money really does grow on trees in our family. We have an unusual story. Thane and I both graduated from the University of Utah. I was a stay-at-home mom with 4 children, while Thane worked as a CPA at KPMG Pete Marwick. Each summer for 3 weeks, we would sell Bear Lake raspberries on the streets in Salt Lake City. In 1997, a small farmer in Perry asked Thane to buy his peach orchard. Thane has never farmed before, either have I. We decided to jump in. Thane quit his job and we bought the farm. The best part about it is this farmer stayed on for 1 year and taught Thane everything he knew about farming. And over the years, Thane has added more crops and learned more things and has become one of the top farmers in Utah. We've been doing this now for 23 years. We now have 70 acres of orchards located in Willard and Perry, Utah. Have you heard of Brigham City peaches? Well, that's us. They've been growing delicious peaches in Box Elder County since 1904. It's the best place in Utah to grow peaches. We also have 38 acres of sweet corn in Corinne and 4 acres of raspberries in Huntsville. We stay diversified by growing a wide variety of fruits and vegetables. We start with peas in June and end with pumpkins at the end of October. Cherries, peaches, corn, berries, tomatoes, watermelons, and pumpkins fill up the summer and fall with deliciousness. We grow a lot of different things, so if one crop fails, other crops will make up for it. Our business plan is to always try to sell directly to the public as much as we can. Tagge's famous fruit runs from the 1st of June till the end of October. We have 7 daily fruit stands. We have 20 weekly farmers markets that we participate in, and we have a fabulous CSA program. CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. Not very many people know what that means, so we call it the Tagge Box. The Tagge Box is a weekly distribution of our finest fruits and vegetables. We are the largest CSA in the state of Utah with over 600 participants and 40 drop-off locations. Are you tired yet? We're busy. We've been asked today to talk about some of the issues facing our farm. So Thane and I brainstormed, and these are some of the things that are pertinent to us right now as farmers. Weather is a big one. We have a short growing season in Utah, and people really don't realize that because in the grocery stores, you're able to get fruit and vegetables year round, even though you don't know where they're coming from. But Utah, really, we only have about a 4-month span of growing fruits and vegetables. And we either freeze out in the spring, and sometimes there's hail in the late summer. So all summer long, we're a little nervous, but we have plenty. The one thing with us is we have plenty of water. Thane implemented drip irrigation. We were the first farmer in Box Elder to put in drip irrigation, and this is a picture of that. All of our trees, all of our fields are on drip irrigation, but unfortunately we can't control the weather. Another issue for us is that's really been happening in the last 5 to 10 years is we're not just farmers anymore. We know how to prune, we know how to cultivate, we know how to pick, we know how to water and spray, and we're awesome at selling our fruit, but we have to be proficient at the computer, at social media. We have to do all our own payroll, our accounting, and our marketing. We can't afford to hire all of those specialists, so we have become the jack of all trades, and that takes time away from actual farming. And it also is very exhausting after we've already put in a 10 to 12 hour day, and I come home and there's 40 emails for me that I have to answer before I go to bed at night. And then in the morning, I get on the computer again every morning at 5 and have to answer more emails from customers and CSA people. And it's pretty overwhelming. Luckily, we have a smart daughter that's good at the computer. Another thing is regulations. Food safety requirements were implemented in 2015, new ones in 2015, and are going into effect this summer. That means a lot more work and expense for us. We almost are going to have to hire another part-time to full-time person just to help us to manage all the regulations that are going to in effect. And the main thing for us is more inspections, which we don't love. Last summer alone, Thane had to take 18 days off work from farming to accommodate inspectors coming to our farm. And that's too much. And we have found that the older farmers will not be able to continue farming with all the hoops that they're going to have to jump through this summer. It's a little overwhelming for small farmers. Also, organic is a big trend right now. And becoming an organic farmer in Utah or anywhere is very expensive and very time consuming. Our orchard is we are the only fruit grower in Utah that is certified organic, and it's not our whole farm. We only have one crop that's certified organic, and that's our blackberries, which we're very proud of, but to get everything else on board would be very difficult for us to do, and obviously everyone in Utah, because hardly anyone is certified organic, at least with orchards and row crops. The other concern we have is our workforce. We hire high school kids and college age, and then I have a few of my friends that I beg to come and help me. I've taught hundreds of kids how to work over the years, and I found in the last 5 to 10 years, the workforce of these younger kids is not as good. They want a lot of money per hour, but they're not willing to give up things and to work and to be able to do it. We sent out 180 W-2s last year. Don't be impressed by that, because the majority of the workers will work a minimum of 5 hours a week, maybe 10. They aren't putting in the full-time 20-hour, 40-hour work weeks for us at all. We also are a seasonal business that's very hard. So we start from June till the end of October, and then it's not a year-round business. So we lose a lot of farmers, a lot of our workers, because they need a job that goes throughout the winter. Other thing is that we talk about is Thane and I really feel an obligation to farm. There's not very many of us around, especially in Utah, and the community needs us to farm. Only 3% of the fruit and vegetables eaten in Utah are grown by Utah farmers. That's not a very big percentage. Just this last year, 3 of our friends sold out to developers and quit farming. It is a huge issue in Utah right now. And Thane and I take pride in what we've accomplished, and we hope to continue. And so it's really important that everyone in our community buys from the local farmers so that we're able to keep everything running. It's also, with the coronavirus, it's really been crucial that we buy locally grown and that we keep that going so that we're able to be producers in the state. And there really isn't very many of us left. The last issue that I've got is land. Our land is worth millions. We bought our land. We did not inherit it from any ancestors or our pioneer relatives. We bought our land. And so we keep adding land every year to our operation and growing more things. And as we get older, everyone's like, you guys keep growing, is there an exit plan? How's this going to continue? So that's an issue for us. Our 4 children all graduated from the University of Utah, but they all have other jobs, but they do help us when they can, but they're not full-time employees. We're getting older. The average age of a farmer in America is 60 years old. Thane is 62 and I'm 58. We're not getting any younger, and we don't really have an exit plan. And we don't want an exit plan. We want to continue to keep this land in the family and to have our family to keep farming. Thane and I are baby boomers. We worked long hours to establish our self-worth, our identity, and our fulfillment. We are driven and we never give up. So we can't see a life for us of like an easy retirement. We want to continue working because that's in our blood. But it is very tempting to cash out, and it's nearly impossible for young farmers to get started because of land prices. The harder it gets, the more times we talk about maybe quitting and throwing in the towel. It's not like it used to be, where I could pull up a truck at the side of the road, open up the back, and just sell raspberries out of the back of my truck. So really, some of the issues that are chipping away at us are this: everybody wants us to be organic. Regulations are overwhelming, and with the national and the local level, even a few farmers markets, we've had to change to biodegradable sacks, and that costs $2,000 a summer for us, just for 2 farmers markets to be able to provide biodegradable sacks. That's a huge expense for us. Also, our workers want us to pay them more, and it's hard to find workers. We also have rising farm costs, but at the same time, everybody wants their fruits and vegetables to be affordable and inexpensive. And we want that as well, but to be able to run this whole thing, we do have to charge more than sometimes they can get it in the grocery store from out of state or out of the country, because our labor force, we've almost doubled of what we've paid everyone over the years, because to be able to get quality, good, hardworking people. And it is exhausting for my gals. I'll have people go to farmers markets and they come to our warehouse at 6 a.m. and they don't pull back in till 6 at night. And they're loading, unloading trucks, standing on their feet all day. And it's very exhausting to keep them even the whole time. And it is hard for them to work 40 hours a week. I don't blame them to work less. So in finalizing all of this, Thane and I are so proud of what we've accomplished and appreciate all the community support in our farming efforts. We are a first-time generation farmer, which is very unusual in Utah to be able to pull this off. The farms in Utah are our last jewels we have. They're the last jewels we have. There's pressure to sell to developers and a ton of new added pressure with the workforce, regulations, and outside stressors we've never had before. Just last summer, Bountiful City tried to force one of the last farmers in Bountiful to give up his land for a soccer field. Until the community threw a fit, it was a done deal. And they had news articles in that people almost showed up with their pitchforks and everything fighting the city council over this. But luckily, they were able to win out and keep their land growing those green beans that we all rely on. You can't get Brigham City peaches or Willard Bay blackberries anywhere else in the world. Local farmers are holding on to the last incredible farmland in the state of Utah. When you buy locally, it's closer to where you're buying it, and it's also fresher. We can leave things on the tree longer and make sure they freshen up and they're delicious and juicy. everyone always says, Cari, your peaches are dripping off my chin. And it's because I can keep them on the tree because they don't have to travel as far as other places. The place to grow the best fruit is where everyone wants to build their homes. We can't lose the last farms we have. Thane and I appreciate what we have and we want to keep a hold of it. And we're doing all we can to continue our legacy. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Cari. Ashley, it's your turn.
Okay. So thanks a lot for inviting me here today. So I'm the director of Wasatch Community Gardens. We're a nonprofit that's been operating in Salt Lake City for 31 years. This photo is a picture of our Gateway Community Garden, and I'm going to tag on some of the similar themes to Cari. You know, we're a nonprofit encouraging other people to grow their own food, but we face a lot of the same things. And one of our big challenges is soil, because we're an urban oriented group. So this particular site is located on a Superfund site. So the whole garden is capped and we can't grow anything in the actual soil. All those beds are 3 feet of soil that we brought in. We brought in a ton of fill dirt on top of the cap. And this is a big issue these days if you want to grow food in a city, because there's been gas stations, dry cleaners, you know, people used to burn coal in their homes and they would just dump that behind their house. It's a pretty big issue that there isn't a lot of information about. So with that, I thought I'd start with this quote from Franklin D. Roosevelt: "The nation that destroys its soil destroys itself." And I partially do that as well to get us all to imagine, when was the last time we had a national leader who might have put such emphasis on agriculture? And I think what we're trying to do at this conference is really exciting, because agriculture is one of those items that is sort of like, oh yeah, the farmers are kind of taking care of that. And as Cari just pointed out, there's less and less farmers. They're older. This is a tough business to get in for young people because of the cost of land. And so we need policy, we need support from our government to make this a viable and attractive way for people to make a living, because it's food. We all need it. So at Wasatch Community Gardens, our mission is to empower people to grow and eat healthy, organic, local food. We are an organic organization. That's been our charter for 31 years. That said, we're not subject to the regulations around organic. So unlike Cari, we have the list of organic standards that we share with our gardeners, and that's what we do in our gardens. But at the end of the day, nobody's coming in and making sure that we are organic. We're not selling anything. So we have it a little easier than a farmer, for example. We're really proud that we started as a project of Crossroads Urban Center. So our roots are serving the most vulnerable people in the community with fresh and healthy food. And as much as we all love this organic, local food movement, it can be a little restrictive income-wise to certain people. So again, this is such a great topic for all of the brains that are converging for a conference like this. Like, how do we allow all of us to have access to fresh, organic, local food? What are some of the policies and regulations and rules and support so that more and more people can partake in the nutritious food that makes us all better? We serve the community with 4 programs, and we do that in order to get more people exposed to, access to, and enjoyment of, and knowledge of the local food system. So one of our programs is a youth and school program. We're currently supporting 14 school gardens in partnership with the Salt Lake City School District. We tend to focus on cool season crops. Cari mentioned the short growing season. Schools, unfortunately, have the summer off when you can grow a lot of the yummy things that they're focused on. So we grow radishes, we grow lettuce greens, and all sorts of things that are really quick to grow and grow when it's cooler. And so then we do salad parties in our schools and try to get kids eating fresh local lettuce. We've also realized that getting food out to kids in schools is kind of one-off type activities. And so we want to engage the parents in how they can get involved. And these school gardens often sit relatively unused in the summer because people, there's no employees going to the school, no kids. And so we started something we call parent garden clubs. And we help them plant, we do an activity, and it's always a potluck. And if you want to get more people to enjoy fresh produce, just do potlucks, because you get exposed to so many different kinds of delicious fresh food, and you're using the stuff right out of the garden. So we love that. We served almost 4,000 kids through the school programs, the summer camps we do in partnership with Red Butte and Natural History Museum and Tracy Aviary and some of those wonderful organizations. And we do field trips with schools. And we also bring in kids from social service agencies. So back to our roots, kids who are part of the YWCA residential program, the Youth City program, Neighborhood House, kids who might not necessarily have access to a backyard garden or a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. This is a really fun program where we teach adults how to grow their own food. And I think Cari probably touched on this as good as I can, but people don't know where food comes from. They don't know how to grow it. And I think we're going to see a lot of people wanting to grow food this summer with this epidemic that we're experiencing right now. There's a bit of taking control of your own life with putting a few tomato plants in the ground. So we're working to get a lot of our curriculum to webinar formats, just like the Stegner Symposium just did. But there's nothing to substitute for getting people out in the garden and showing them how to do it. We really want to make sure. It can be discouraging. Cari just went through a huge list of issues that they have as farmers, and you'd only have one chance to get your seeds to germinate, and then the window of that crop is it's often fairly narrow. And so if you don't have success, you can get discouraged really easily. So we want to make that available to people, to get people to grow their own food. So we do 30 or 40 workshops a year, serving 500 to 700 different people. So we also have a job training farm. We're really lucky that Salt Lake City has leased us an 1.5 acres down in the Depot District. And we started this not necessarily to train people as farmers. We started this as a place that could help with the homelessness issue in our area in 2015. So we serve about 10 to 20 women each year, and they come in from shelters. They make $8 to $10 an hour and run this farm for us, work on this farm for us. And in the meantime, they get into housing, and then they start getting into other employment. And so this is our 5th season. We have had fairly great degree of success because it's even though it's hard work, it's a fairly satisfying place to be if perhaps you've had the trauma in your life of homelessness. And so, it's growing food. It's beautiful. It's kind of, you can eat what you grow. So it's been a really great experience And we're going to continue to do it as long as they let us keep using that land. We expanded it last year to work with another group of women, single moms in poverty, and we used the farm to work with them for about 40 hours over 10 weeks. And in the meantime, they got trained to be certified nursing assistants. And what was really fun about this is these women were so proud of their ability to be able to take home a box of food from the farm to their kids. And these are women who haven't had a lot of those opportunities, and wanting to provide fresh and healthy food to their kids is something that made them really proud and made them feel really good about themselves. And so it's almost more about the self-confidence and the empowerment than it is about the food for this particular program, but it's the food that gives them that. It's growing the food that gives them that self-confidence and that empowerment. So, farming and gardening has just so many different benefits. That farm also grows over 30,000 plants for our spring plant sale, and they're all grown organically. It's an unheated greenhouse. We have a couple of little propane heaters in the desperate times, but we're pretty proud of the kind of shoestring budget that we operate on. And I think we grow pretty much the best seedlings in the state. So we're still going to try to have it this year, even with this coronavirus. We've got stuff started every day, so stay tuned. And then our last program is our namesake program. It's our community garden program. We work with, it'll be up above 600 gardeners this year because we're starting 2 new community gardens. One of them is at Richmond Park, and there's a little drawing of the garden, and this was just a couple weeks ago. We're starting to move the boxes in, and there's already a wait list well beyond the number of garden plots that we have. The other one is at Sugar House Park, which I think is so exciting. It's going to be behind the garden center. The county is our partner in that, and so this is kind of a fancier garden, but that's kind of how this project was looking a couple weeks ago. So that one will also be open in time for hopefully people to plant their warm season crops. Mother's Day weekend is usually when we really do that in earnest. And with that, I really feel like our primary challenges are the soil pollution and contamination and how to deal with that, which I talked about a little bit at the beginning, but primarily the increased urbanization of this area and the cost of land and the lack of ability to be able to save these little parcels of land. And so we own 2 gardens. One is the Grateful Tomato Garden on 800 South and 600 East. And we bought this in 1996, and I put this photo up because the headline, Cultivating Funds Tougher Than Tilling, finding the money for an organization like ourselves or a farmer to buy these properties is becoming an impossible feat. And if we want to grow more than 2 to 3% of our fruits and vegetables, we have to preserve the remaining farmland and garden spaces that we have. We bought another parcel in 2008, and it's very close to downtown. So it's 553 South, 400 East. And of course, there's the headline again, garden will likely survive, just needs a little more green. So even, 10, 12 years ago, the challenge was to try to get money together to make these purchases to maintain these spaces. And we were able to do the 2008 project with open space funds. Those have become very, very scarce in the last several years. And so preserving ag land using those funds is even harder than it was back in 2008. So the farm where we do the job training program, we call the Green Phoenix farm. Salt Lake City Redevelopment Agency provides that land. However, it is called the Redevelopment Agency because they want to redevelop it. And so one of the things we keep trying to point out is agriculture can't be a placeholder for something else. It can't be a placeholder until we do the thing, which is the apartment building, the movie theater, the sports complex, the shopping mall. Like, agriculture is the thing. And so I feel like we really need this to be a bigger issue on the political stage in order to get where we need to go with that, because the land is not going to, replicate itself. Once it's gone, it's gone. This is our gateway garden. That first photo I showed you is what it looked like, at the end of the season. This was the day we finished installing it. And I love showing this photo because it shows that this is one of the densest neighborhoods in the state. And there's apartments and condos all around this building. These people are desperate for green space and they want to grow some of their own food. They're apartment dwellers and condo dwellers. And this is a community gathering space where they can share food, share recipes, share ideas. And that garden was full the first season with a waiting list as long as the number of plots we had. So we could easily triple the size of that garden, but we don't have any more space. And I show this Google Earth image. This is the Green Phoenix Farm, which is on 100 South and just west of 600 West. This is the railroad, I-15, giant parking lot. All of this is slated for very dense urban development. So multi-story housing with retail on the bottom. And our little Gateway Community Garden is right here up at the top. We need to figure out, this is some of this is some of the last open space. Why can't we do some food farm, permaculture type stuff? Like we don't have very many opportunities left. This is one of the few in the downtown area. And one of the projects we've embarked on to try to make that point a little bit more, because we're here to try to advocate in some part for farmers, but we're starting what we call the Wasatch Community Gardens campus. And we are using the Grateful Tomato Garden, which we already owned. We purchased 3 properties to the west of it, or to the east of it, in 2017. Super lucky. We had one owner who sold all 3 at once, and they're historic homes, so they were not able to be demoed. So we were able to, there wasn't as much demand as there might have been for those parcels. The Salt Lake City government, we needed to rezone these in order to put our offices in these buildings. And so they've required us to replace the housing units. And I bring this up because I think this is a really interesting solution to consider, is these residential units that we're having to build will spin off income that can help to maintain this parcel of land as agriculture. And we do have a conservation easement on this already that protects it as agricultural open space in perpetuity. So we're trying to look at this requirement for these residential units as a way of actually protecting farmland. So perhaps you could, if you've got 80 acres, but you sell off 10 and build around it, does that help preserve the 70 and give you some revenue stream? So anyway, that's an idea that we're piloting with this project. And so that's kind of all I have for today.
Thank you so much. And I already see some common themes emerging about the law, actually,
Good.
including various sorts of things like zoning. So, Philip, you're up next from Beltex Meats.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. My name is Philip Grubisa. I'm the owner of a butcher shop in Salt Lake City called Beltex Meats. Like Leslie mentioned before, I come from a chef's background. I have been a culinary school graduate in 2003 and have moved all over the country and have trained all over the world and have had the pleasure of doing so. But the one thing that I found fascinating in my field of work in high-end restaurants was preservation. Preservation of meat in particular. And when we talk about preservation of meat, we're really talking about charcuterie, that all-encompassing word of salting and curing meats for the long haul. So I fell in love with that avenue. So a few years back, decided to take the plunge into business ownership. And it's kind of taken off for me. And I couldn't be more proud of what we do. We, as a chef up in Park City in my later years, started to develop menus around entire carcass animals. So instead of buying boxes of individual cuts, we decided to buy the entire hog, let's say, and work our way through it. And what the obvious challenge was immediately is your customer base is not prepared for you telling them what to eat. I think we had to get very good and pretty fast on how to explain what we were doing. And what we were doing was we have to understand that when it comes to meat, there are more than just ribeyes, New York strips, filet mignon, and a pork chop on an animal. We get whole steer or whole cattle here at our shop, and they weigh upwards of 1,000 pounds dead. So, you know, a 1,500, 1,700 pound animal does provide us with many, many different options for food. But I think as a consumer in America, we've zeroed into just a few items off of each individual animal. And for the local families around the area that were raising these heritage breed animals for us, really showing that there's like a connection between all three. We have a customer base, we have us as providing a service for the community, or a service for people that want to just get out for the night. And there is a small farmer behind all that. And I think those three things became out that we can't always have a ribeye because there's 1,000 more pounds of animal to be eaten. So it kind of blossomed from there. Beltex Meats became my baby, and I started it in the farmers markets. And what I started to do was just pork. So I bought whole hogs from Christensen Family Farms. They were at the time in Mount Vernon. And what I would do would drive out to their farm after they've received the pig back from slaughter, pick up the pig, go back to Park City using a friend's kitchen, do the butchery. And we made pretty much three products. We did pork chops, bacon, and the rest turned into pate. And the idea of the pate was, one, it's a product that you find everywhere else in the world that is very much normalcy in diets, but it's utilizing every part of the animal, all the organ meats, any trim that might be left over, and beyond. It's a true nose to tail product, all-encompassing product, if you will. And when we went to the farmers markets, it was the more nerve-wracking product was the pate. Will people eat this? Was kind of my fear, because if people wouldn't eat pate, they wouldn't eat all the different products that we had in mind to make, because it all consisted of utilizing the entire animal. It took off. I mean, we couldn't make pate fast enough, and then it just became an obvious that we were able to work our way into the many different products that we have to offer. So immediately we started buying more whole animals from the farms that we were dealing with. We're immediately supporting those families because they're in the business of selling the entire animal and not selling pork chops. We were, for lack of a better term, a godsend to them. I mean, we are a unique shop in Salt Lake City. I think even in Utah, because we truly do buy entire animals and utilize the entire animal to the best of our ability. We don't buy boxed beef. There is a place for that, and it's just what we've decided not to be a part of here. And why is that? I think we have amazing agriculture here in Utah that, 10 years ago as a cook and a chef, I didn't see a lot of people utilizing it to its potential, especially in the meat sector. And we have just a need to show people how good the meat is here in Utah that's being grown. And I think the pros to what we do are supporting, those small families. They are very appreciative of us. We are able to keep a few people actually were on the brink of disappearing, and we feel like we were a part of them sticking around. I am in no way, I'm in a 900 square foot butcher shop in Salt Lake City. I don't have the means of really lifting a family out of near bankruptcy by any means. That's farming pigs for us, but they are now seeing more and more people catch on. If we can just create a trend of this here in Utah, that would be a success story for us. I think the community rallies behind us in our little area of Liberty Wells neighborhood. We really bank on those people that just keep coming back continually throughout the week, the month, the year. They really, truly believe in our story. We're pretty transparent. If you've ever been in our shop, you can see all the nitty-gritty that's going on. Sorry, I didn't think slides of dead animals at 10 in the morning were going to be too interesting for everybody, but it is truly a sight in here. I think sometimes I get to finally step back and look back into the store, and you'll really understand that we are truly showing people where their food comes from, right at our register stand, if you will. So we have a unique opportunity to give people it's really hard to get an insight, a clear look at going to a big box grocery store, and you go to their meat section, it's just there, it's all packaged, it's ready for you, which is definitely like a place for that. But sometimes people are so confused at what it actually looks like when they come into our store for the first time. So we have that opportunity. I think that's a pro for us. Because we buy the entire animal, we have a diverse selection of offerings that you will not see in a local grocery store. I've been trained to what we call seam butchery in the business, and what that is to really, if you will, kind of dissect every singular muscle out of the animal, because we have that 1,000-pound cow that comes in. We only have the symmetry of the two sides of the animal, and there's only a select few cuts that really come off of each side. So knowing how to go through each individual cut, we tend to see verbiage that you might not see here in American grocery stores, like gooseneck round, London broils, kind of a general term, but we're talking about like the knuckle of beef, the spinalis dorsi of the beef, all these kind of different cuts that so we grind it. And then we say chuck is in our burger. Well, chuck is the shoulder of the beef that has almost 18 different cuts that come out of there. But for the most part, we see it as it's this term chuck. It makes us feel good. It's in my burger. But there's a lot more to it than that. So I think that's what we do a little differently is show people that there is more to beef than just those marketed cuts. I think we have an obvious less environmental impact doing what we're doing. We are direct. I mean, we directly deal, especially in this time in particular. It's a perfect example. I think we're extremely busy right now because we have meat, we have food. We're not going to run out of food. We have farmers that are just an hour away that have a lot of head of animal for us that are waiting for us to take them. So I think you'll see that just a short supply chain like that for us, direct to farmer rancher, we're having no issue here whatsoever putting meat on the shelves right now. We have an issue with the amount of people that are kicking down the door every morning at the moment, but it's kind of those good problems, obviously, we like to say that. So we have to also be prepared for what's to come. Are we going to slow down and have to not really offer as much? So we are kind of zeroing in to a certain offering right now. But that being said, we don't have big trucks that need to arrive here every day. We don't ship, we don't package meat for wholesale. We're just not set up to do that. So we don't have this large environmental impact as if we were sending trucks away from our building or asking trucks to come to our building just to keep this like flow of meat coming in. I think the cons of our business, obviously, we are asking farmers to raise an animal in a particular way without the use of antibiotics, without the use of hormones, without the use of steroids, which creates a slower growing process for animal, which in turn they need to provide that much more feed for the animal. So that's an expensive way to raise an animal. For us, we have to buy expensive meat, even at its raw state like that. It's quite a bit more than buying commodities meat that's grown pretty rapidly to keep up with the system. So for us, our margins are really small. We have to charge so much more to make a dollar here, which I think what Ashley was saying is a major issue. It's hard for us to, in one sentence, say we're being environmentally friendly, we're using the entire animal, but in another, everyone cannot eat our product, which is a big issue for me personally, because we put, I've been working 15-hour days since 2004, and I mean, I love what I do, but sometimes you start to get so bogged down at the fact that we really only have a certain demographic that we're actually feeding. And we want to be a part of a change that's happening where I think if more people just commit to eating like this, the more people will pop up growing like this, the more people will be able to afford this because prices will come down. And I think that is something that weighs heavy on the head. We love what we do. We certainly offer something that's of value to someone, and it's a product that we stand behind wholeheartedly, but we're totally only taking a percentage of the population inside of our building. And that's a major issue for me. I think it's because of the costs to me to start with. I have to translate that cost into my customers. Another very big con, or a thing that we deal with here is the lack of employee pool. I mean, I think I mentioned before, we are very unique in Utah, where we are butchering whole animals and turning them into these items where we cut steaks and everything, but we do a lot of curing here too. So we're making these salamis, these pates, and so forth. There's not a lot of people with the experience around here with that. We're happy to teach people, but when the going gets tough and you're really looking for somebody immediately, it's next to impossible to find somebody with experience. I had a drive in me to go out and learn to do what I do, but in the hospitality industry, in the back of the house, we say, like the cooking end of my industry, it's not as prevalent anymore for somebody to really give that kind of effort and to putting a passion into something they really want to do. There's a lot of growth difficulty too. The meat industry in America is regulated more stricter than I think most everything in America. It's definitely obvious that you can make a lot of people sick pretty quickly through meat in America, and we see that through recalls quite often in the commodities meat sector in America. For us, we're in this little tiny shop. We're doing so well that we would love to grow a little bit, but right now we are regulated by the Department of Ag in Utah and not the USDA. If we wanted to grow, we would have to go into the USDA inspection. That costs a lot of money in the meat world to do. I am doing this with myself and my wife, are the backers of this business. We started it truly through the farmer's market and just kind of eased our way into a brick and mortar. And now we're seeing the positive impact that we're making in our community, and we're seeing, we're seeing profits come in. But in order for us to grow, we would have to spend millions of dollars next. And we don't understand, other than the fact to go out and ask for that money, where that would come from. I don't come from money. My father is an immigrant to the United States, so I have his work ethic for sure. But we don't have anyone to grab that kind of money from as easy as it seems like sometimes when you see major food companies in America popping up all the time. And then in order for us to do that, the regulation happen would make it next to impossible for us to keep buying the product we're currently buying because of that product being at a higher price. And we're talking about trying to grow, we would have to offer our offerings at a lower price in order to go wholesale. So it's like this constant battle of what we can achieve in a day here or what we can achieve in 5 years here. We really want to grow. We want to be as big as we can be, I guess. But with that, we would almost start to over kind of step what is available to us right now from our certain farms and ranches that we buy from. They wouldn't be able to provide that for us as quick as we want them to. But we do believe that there is a need to get this product to a bigger audience. We still believe in what we do as being a service, even though, like I said, it seems that we can only offer it to a percentage of the population. We're desperate in trying to figure out that riddle of cost to us to translating that into cost to the customer and being able to profit, obviously, and stay afloat from that. And I think that we do a decent job at the financials part of it, but I think we do an excellent job at supporting the small farm and ranch in our area because of our ability to buy the entire animal and truly make food from the entire thing. Another big avenue of our butcher shop that we hang our hats on is waste. We try every little thing to me here has the potential to, one, make into food, two, turn into a profit. And I preach that to my employees to really look at the trash can at the end of the day. We have this method of really trying to have very little waste in the trash at the end of the day. So we buy a whole animal, we make meats, we do charcuterie, salami, things like that, but we have a head and a tail on the animal, right? So we have a huge dog food treat program here that has taken off beyond my wildest dreams. I could not understand at first how well that sector of my business is going. It's something we try to keep up with now, and we sell some bones to dogs. We make all the fascia that's in between the muscles on the animal is pure waste for the most part. And it's certainly waste in most commodities, slaughter facilities, butcher facilities in America. We turn that into raw dog food. We use some organ meats that pile up on us pretty quickly for the raw dog food. We make bone broths by the gallons full here with the bones. And then we've even attempted to make, and we will kind of get this to a dialed state, but when we make the bone broth, we've boiled the bones in water for 48 hours. Now we have bones. We still have bones at the end of that. We strain that water off, but there's still physical bones in the pot. That is still, to me, like weight. We bought this animal for price per pound, even though we've extracted all the minerals out of the bones. We still have this item. So we tried to, and we have a couple times successfully made charcoal out of the bones. So if we're able to make charcoal 100% of the time, we would then have a true 100% yield on our product. Because we cater, we do some off-site cooking where we roast whole pigs. We would utilize that charcoal to roast the animal. So you're kind of seeing this this cyclical motion of just the one animal right in our little building. And that's our goal 100% of the time, is how can we utilize the entire animal? How do we pay homage to the animal? It's food to everyone else. To us, it's this whole growth process, this whole process that happened to us. And we really have to respect that. And one way of doing that is trying to utilize the entire animal. And then there are moments where some cows, 1,000 pounds, you get about 90 pounds of fat off of a cow. So that can pile up pretty quickly. There are other avenues for us, which was from day one, we thought about, we had this stuff piling up quickly. It was beef fat. What can we do? We brainstormed some ideas. We can render it. Okay, so we melt it slowly, and we use that for our fryer fat. We fry pork rinds here. That's the pork skin being used for chicharrones. That's one way to do it. We sell quite a bit of fat, but it still keeps piling up. So what do? We called the Hogle Zoo and asked them if they can utilize that for any animal feed. And they were just couldn't wait for us to call. They utilize a lot of our beef fat and then our skulls after we've removed all the meat off of them for the polar bears. So we donate that to the Hogle Zoo. So if we can't use it and we can't find a way to get it back into our system in the building, there's definitely an avenue for it for somebody else to benefit from it, so it doesn't go into the trash can. So that's definitely a big help for us. They take all of our skulls. They used to have a wolf there, and they use that for the wolves exhibit. We have the Tracy Aviary across the street with the vultures exhibit that we donate a skull to, and the like the animal feed sector of our business is something I never really thought of until it's like piled up on a table in front of you. So we have that luxury. We have the luxury of not breaking down cardboard boxes every day of meats coming in. We have the luxury of not having to call a major box truck to show up here every single day. I look at those as luxuries because there's a beauty in it to what we do. There's something beautiful about a whole animal coming in and then turning it into all the different products. At any given time in our store, we've had up to 125 different PLUs. So we can make from one or two animals about 130 different types of food products, whether that be raw, fresh, a sausage that's been spiced, a salami that's been cured, and so on. It's certainly something that we see in butcher shops. It's very common in Europe. And I think that's what we do here is more of a European style approach to butchery. And if anybody's had the luxury of going overseas and seeing how they approach their food, that's certainly something I was always fascinated by when I was over there. I had the opportunity to train in Italy twice. And just the normalcy of it, of buying food the way they did from a local butcher was just almost mind-blowing in a way, because we go to a giant store, and I'd never even been to a giant store in the 3-month span that I was in Italy and then 1 month in Spain. I didn't even remember seeing one. It's just not something they do on the normal. And I think they get by pretty well by sticking to those small family farms, small family butcher shops. I mean, they just go to the farmer to get their greens and vegetables. They go to the butcher to get their meats. I mean, it was a couple times I went directly to a dairy farm with the guy to get milk, which was, I grew up in Miami, Florida. This is unseen, unheard of down there. So I fell in love with the food and agriculture systems out west. And I think with Beltex Meats, we definitely offer something to hang your hat up on when you come and buy a steak or a sausage from us. So again, that's definitely my small little tidbit about what we do. I could do that forever, but that's certainly what I wake up every morning happy to do here, is support small families who raise excellent food here in Utah.
Philip, thank you so very much. Carlos, it's now your turn.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. And thank you all for participating in this. It's been really great hearing about the good work you're all doing. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on with local food here in Salt Lake and in Utah. And I know this in part because when I offered a course last semester in food and the environment, almost all the students who signed up for the course had been involved in local food in one way or another. I had a student who worked for Bug Farms, which grows food in backyards here on the west side of Salt Lake, a student who had worked for Roots Charter High School in West Valley, which is a farm-based high school, another student who had organized a farmer's market. Some of the students would come in and give tutorials to the class about how to forage for food in the city, as students would prepare dishes for us that they had made from food they grew themselves here or that they had foraged for locally. And so we were really excited to talk about local food and its potential social and environmental benefits. And so we read a bunch of literature, both scientific literature as well as literature in the environmental humanities on local food movements, and and so on. And one thing that actually kind of surprised me, even though I had picked out this literature to represent a bunch of different views, is how strongly my students reacted to what they learned. So I'm going to read you just a couple little short snippets of some of the things my students wrote when we finished talking about local food. So one student, Ben Kilborn, who is born and raised in a rural community here in Utah, he wrote this: would I really want to eat local beef in Utah when 85% of the water here is used for agriculture and we didn't have that much water to begin with? As well, if a local cow could be trampling cryptobiotic soils in Capitol Reef in the winter and browsing young aspen shoots on the edge of the Pando clone in the summer, do I really want to be part of that destruction by supporting those local ranchers? This consideration prompts more questions. Are there crops that represent the claimed benefits of eating local in Utah? And is it possible that some places in the arid West are not well suited to eating local? The next stuff I'm going to read from is from my student Michelle Wentling, who has traveled around the country studying sort of local arts and crafts movement, including, among other things, food. And so she writes this: in Mark Sunding's latest book, The Unsettlers, an exploration of the recent back to the land revival through off-grid living, he interviews Greg Willerer, a Detroit farmer who comments, how many people does it take to make an urban farm? The answer, 25 filmmakers and journalists to do pieces on urban farming, 63 grad students to study the farm, a few people from the not-for-profit complex to hold meetings about farming, a few elected officials to have their pictures taken at the farm, and about 5 people to do the actual farming. In Willer's opinion, the local food movement is perpetuated by reaffirmation from media and nonprofit organizations rather than on-the-ground labor. Sunding describes later in the book that this act of reaffirmation further perpetuates displacement in Detroit rather than internal growth within existing communities. It was really interesting to see how my students came to much more nuanced views of local food than what they came to the class with, just thinking that it was going to solve all the problems. And it's not to say that doesn't solve a lot of problems. I think we've heard from all 3 of our participants already many of the good things that local food can do for us. And since we're running short on time, I'm going to be brief here, and I'm just going to kind of summarize some of the conclusions my students came to about which of the promised benefits of local foods do seem to be paying out, and which ones seem to be more complicated perhaps than some of the rhetoric gets into. So here's some of the things that we decided local food often does in a positive way. Among other things, it helps keep money local, as many of you noted. It also helps, and this is important, helps create both a sense of place where we feel connected to the geography of the region we're in, but also a sense of community where we feel connected to our neighbors. Local food projects and movements can help give a sense of food sovereignty, where not only do people have food security where they feel like they have the food they need, but they feel like they have some ownership and investment in the food systems that they're a part of, and those food systems reflect their personal and cultural preferences. And finally, local food movements are a nice oppositional force to global and industrial agriculture, which, while it's nice that it feeds us all, often does so in ways that can be justifiably criticized. So there are these ways that we decided the literature does seem to support that local food movements are effective in bringing the benefits that are promised. But a lot of the other promised benefits of local food movements, we ended up in places where we were much more skeptical about. In particular, the promise of local food movements contributing to social justice and to food justice, we're not there yet. As Philip noted, the customers for local food products tend to be white and relatively affluent. And there are all of these barriers, many of which the 3 of you have discussed, to producing local food in a way that makes it accessible to a broader spectrum of our community. Additionally, a lot of local food rhetoric tends to be parochial in ways that sort of reinforce favoring the in-group over people who are different from us or people who are already disadvantaged. And And finally, local food doesn't rarely produces enough, cheaply enough in places like Utah to address issues of food security or food deserts. And, and I know there are organizations that are doing good work on this, but researchers here at the U who are studying things like food deserts in Salt Lake City have shown that the approaches we're taking don't really reflect the experiences of the poor communities that we have, at least at the present time. Now, another of the commonly claimed benefits of local food is that it is more sustainable. And in a lot of cases, this is certainly true. But the literature on this says this depends on a lot of conditions that we don't always think about. Clearly, if you don't have to ship food long distances, there is a benefit from not having to go through that shipping. But there are all sorts of other practices where things might become unsustainable in agriculture. And particularly if you're in an area like Utah that requires lots of inputs of water, fertilizer, or energy, or things like that, that can create other environmental consequences. And in some ways, locality isn't as important as seasonality, since storage and processing require often as much or more greenhouse gas inputs than transportation does. Additionally, crop yields vary from place to place. So one thing that we found from the literature was that it might be that given that you can say produce more of this fruit in Mexico per acre, it actually has less environmental impact to grow it in Mexico and ship it to Utah than it does to grow in Utah, where you get less yield per acre. Similarly, while local food is an important part of building resilient food systems, local food is often not, I don't know the best way to put this, maybe in a lot of ways, a more globalized system is actually more resilient to local shocks than local food is. So when you're looking at something that's global, like the current pandemic, it makes sense that having this local source of food is helpful to us. But a lot of shocks to the food system are local. It's just there was bad weather, or there was a disease or something like that, and this particular crop failed locally. And having a global system can actually create stronger food security, where consumers have access to enough safe and nutritious food at affordable prices. And that's something which local food movements that they exist haven't been able to address very well yet. The last thing I want to point out it's sometimes claimed that eating local is healthier, but this turns out to be highly contextual. There might be some crops and meats which are healthier grown locally, but it just depends where you are, who you'd be buying from otherwise, and so on. And there doesn't seem to be any general benefit to eating local in terms of health. Now, again, I want to keep this short, so I'm not going to go into much more detail on any of that. I just wanted to sort of raise some critical questions about some of the benefits of eating locally. And one thing I want to note, since this is our sort of secondhand regurgitation of a bunch of scientific and social scientific studies, is that all of this, almost all the science, basically all of the science, is about fresh food. It's about fresh produce and fresh meats. And there is basically no science looking at potential costs and benefits of locally grown and locally processed foods, like Phillips cured meats or Cari's, jams, and salsas. And so we actually have no idea on the environmental and social benefits of those processed foods, because there's been almost no study on them. Since we're already well over time, I think I'll just cut it short there. And thank you again for all that interesting information you shared with us.
Thank you, Carlos, for those challenges. So I want to know, I actually think there was a lot of agreement, because Cari worried, for example, about water and irrigation. and Philip about processing. And Ashley tries to deal, although there are constraints with lower income populations and access to local food. At the same time, I think everybody agreed that one of the things we don't know enough, but since this is a symposium sponsored by the law school, the other theme that I think everybody noticed in some way or another is that another challenge is what our legal regimes look like. Our regulatory regimes, our zoning, our property regimes, and our support for low-income populations. All of those, the law is implicated in. So with those brief comments about bringing things together, I want to ask each of you, and I'm going to go in order, for a couple of sentences as a last word. So Cari, why don't I invite you to, what do you want the audience to most remember from this session?
Well, I really appreciate Ashley, all that she's doing. I wish I could do more educational things, but I really admire what she does. But I disagree with some of the things that Carlos has said, of course, and this is one reason why. When you have locally grown fruit and vegetables, I will put my raspberries, my blackberries, my peaches that were just picked the day of or the day before, anytime against anyone else. Tomatoes. We can leave everything on the vine, pick it fresh, bring it down. And it's not the cost. They have programs in Utah now at almost every farmer's market. There's the SNAP program and the Double Up Bucks program, where people at lower income are able to come and purchase fresh fruits and vegetables. They don't buy the salts and jam or things like that, but they buy specifically fresh fruits and vegetables for that community. And the quality and the flavor that we're able to offer. And the other thing is too, is we've all found, as you've gone to grocery stores right now with the pandemic that we have, the shelves are empty. There is no fruits and vegetables out there. And let me tell you, we've already planted 6 acres of peas that will be ready to start picking the end of May. And then our trees, we have over 8,000 trees this will not affect them. And so we're going to be able to still provide for the community. And you don't want to have that go away. We need that available for everyone. And it's just not the certain demographic that's able to buy it. We've kept our fruit and vegetables very low. We have actually made less money as we go because we're getting chipped away at, because we do want to be competitive, and we also want to be able to provide, all of that we grow for everybody. That's my last word.
Thank you. Ashley, your last word.
Well, I totally appreciate all 4 of the folks who spoke today, and particularly Carlos for looking at all the research, because I think when you're a practitioner, you don't really, it's beyond your daily regimen to be able to really dive into that. But I think what I want the audience to know is the reward of investing in a local food system is amazing. It comes from relationships with local farmers, all the stuff Philip talked about, which is just this integrity around the stuff that we eat, which is we all have to do. And it's a really, for lack of a better word, it's a religious experience, sharing food that where it comes from, that you've partaked in it growing or preparing it. And so I feel like there's value in all aspects of exploring, trying to get more local food, more people engaged in the system, and looking at all the different ways that we can do that.
Thank you. Philip.
Yes. First off, thanks again for inviting me to this. I think The end of the day, it's, again, I'll say it, it's something that I can personally hang my hat on. There is no end in sight for big box grocery stores, it looks like to me, but we still all can play a part in providing our small pockets of our communities a different option. And at the end of the day, in America, I get the opportunity. I'm blessed to have the option with who I get to choose to do business with. And the people that I support are the people that I want to have monetary exchange with at the end of the day. And that's support enough for me to keep, pushing on. And we'll just keep doing what we're doing. And I think we'll all, the three of us here, are playing an integral part in the grand scheme of if everybody was in a video meeting like this right now with this amount of talent out there, we're definitely on a mission, and I think we're all heading towards the same direction by doing this.
Carlos.
Okay, again, thank you all. And just to echo a couple of things, a lot of the discourse around local food is discourse about voting with your wallet, and that's really important. And I hope you vote with your wallet and go buy food from Cari and Philip and the other people who are doing this good work around town. But as Leslie was pointing out, another thing you need to do is vote with your vote. That there are all these obstacles to small-scale local agriculture, and a lot of ways in which our political and legal system favors large-scale, non-local agriculture. And this should be, if these are issues that's important to you, this should be something that influences the way that you try and change these legal frameworks.
Thank you all. We're all in this together. And thank you for an amazingly rich panel. And go forth and have a wonderful day, everybody. And stay safe. Bye.